Okay guys, I'm here today with Rich Korfhage. I just made a seminar on his school here in Long Island, and I'm gonna ask Rich some questions because he has some very interesting story. He has been doing Jiu-Jitsu for a very long time, and he's one of the first black belts in Jiu-Jitsu in the East Coast. He got his black belt from Serra, and he started Jiu-Jitsu in 93. 93, I was 6 years old. I started Jiu-Jitsu back in 2001, so he has a very long time of Jiu-Jitsu, and he has his school here for like 10 years, and he was telling me all these stories when he started, that didn't have too many people to train, that he had to drive to the city, almost like every time he wanted to train he had to go to New York City. So how was it, Rich? When you started? Tell me about a little bit about
I started in 93. I was 33 years old at the time, and I was already married and had kids and holding down a full-time job. And I was a martial artist since I was 9 years old, but I used to do stand-up fighting mostly, wrestler in high school. And like everybody else, when you saw Royce go into the UFC and saw this art, this thing called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it intrigued me, and what is this? And I got to learn more of it. And where could we learn it? And at the time, there was only one gentleman, and he was a place called Red Bank, New Jersey. So I used to drive from Red Bank, New Jersey on the weekends. And
how long driving?
Oh God, a couple of hours, 2 hours at least, to get over there and train for an hour. And that was it. They cut you off at an hour, and you were done. And the interesting about the jiu-jitsu at the time, the moves were like 15 moves, and you keep recycling the same 15 moves. But the interesting about driving there and the people that I met is when I got there was one younger gentleman sitting in the corner, very focused, and when it was time to train, you want to train, and I was about 200 and probably 220 pounds at the time. This gentleman was probably about 150 pounds, and he ran up and down me like I wasn't even there, and his name turned out to be Serra. So I met back there. He was probably 19 or 20 years old at the time. And we both traveled over there, and we got to know each other, and we're still friends to this day. He's my instructor. So that was the start of it. And as I said, this particular black belt was from the West Coast, and he came to the East Coast to start to teach. And it was the only place to go, but it was very, very limited knowledge. It wasn't. I don't think there was. It could have been probably more forthcoming. Could have gave up more, but it was very limited moves and keep recycling the same moves. And then Renzo came in.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so then when Renzo came in, he just opened that door, and then we were just learning at a very quick pace, and everybody was improving. So we were all we went under Renzo, and from there I would just go from Long Island to the city. He had a school in Manhattan.
Hey, when you guys want to use the shower,
and then we'd drive into Manhattan and always train there, and Renzo really taught us. That's when we really started learning about jiu-jitsu, but not only the aspect of the physicalities about it, but he also taught me, and I think Matt as well, I don't want to speak for Matt, but like how Matt runs his academy, how I run my academy. He taught us to be good jiu-jitsu practitioners, but how to make your students your family, how to make that environment.
Yeah, that's very important.
That brings in the right type of people, and champions are born out of that. But when Renzo came in, that's when everything really took off, and he started. He wanted to do something out on Long Island because he was in Manhattan at the time. Rodrigo Gracie was with us, and Matt, and they got very, very close, and we all came out here, and Renzo drove out here, and there was a building probably 5 minutes from here. We called it the Barn, and it was great training over there. So Renzo said at the time, listen, I have a lot going on in Manhattan, and he gave the school to Matt and Rodrigo.
Oh,
and
cool.
then he said to us, he said, look, you guys are out on Long Island. He goes, you're all under me, but, stay with them. And, Matt and Rodrigo started building their clientele and their base, and it was a very good time for both of those, they started getting involved in Rodrigo and Pride and the jiu-jitsu tournaments, and these guys started to ascend. And from just this little school out of nowhere, these champions were born. And I stayed under Matt. Rodrigo later on had gone to the West Coast, and Matt stayed here. And I stayed under Matt, and under his tutelage. And before work, I would drive to his house, and on the second floor, and we'd roll. And I'd roll with him for the fights. I'd go into the academy. He'd lock the door. It'd be just me and him, and we'd roll for his UFC fights. And he really taught me a lot, as did Renzo.
That's cool.
And it was awesome, good stuff.
I bet like this is like this was all that East Coast had about Jiu-Jitsu, right? So you were part of the history of growing Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, I was there from
that's very cool.
Pretty much from the beginning, and like, you know, the premier guy on Long Island is Matt. He's the guy, and I'm happy to say that I was there from the beginning, like, you know, just meeting this guy in Red Bank, New Jersey, just by chance, and just watching his career blow up and being able to take that ride with him, and then later on become one of his black belts. And now a third-degree black belt is a very big honor. And,
that's awesome.
And Renzo was always right there too. I was home the other day and the phone rang, and I thought it was Matt because it said Matt, and there's an accent, and I recognized that accent. It was Renzo. You know, he's like, "Where you been? How you doing?" And you know, just catching up. And you know, he's like he says, "I never forget any of my students." That's what he said to me. And he's going to come out soon and say hello to everybody. So I've been very lucky.
Yeah, and you mentioned that he taught you guys how to make this family environment. That, in my opinion, is the most important thing in every jiu-jitsu. And here I felt that. Like, I did the seminar here today, and I felt like a great environment. So
yeah,
so that's true. That's happening.
Yeah.
And another thing you said that was cool to me is that one of the reasons so you got in a lot of jiu-jitsu was because Matt was way smaller than you and beat you up. That was the way that I started jiu-jitsu. Like, a friend of my brother who was very small, he used to play with his friends, and he was the smallest one who would kick everybody's ass. So
exactly.
I was like, man, that's cool. I learned that. So that was very nice. And how much have you seen like jiu-jitsu growing since then until today? Like especially like in the East Coast.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's it kind of formed my outlook on jiu-jitsu and how I teach. Like, I'll say to my students, like, you know, you have to learn your jiu-jitsu first with the basis of what I was taught through Matt and Renzo, and that's covering all the positions and your attacks from those positions and your escapes from those positions. And if you don't have that down and you're building a house, that's your foundation. If you don't have a strong foundation, I don't care how pretty your house is, it's going to fall down. So I tell the guys, make sure, you know, you have your escapes. We go over all the attacks from all different positions. Then, depending on the body types, dictates what, are you Berimbolo, you know, are you, you know, you X-guard guy, you single leg X, you know, you swing from there. So that's what I tell the guys, and what I say is, like, my brown belts are sitting right here, but when I get them to brown belt and they're promoted, I shake their hand and I say to them, and I always make a habit of saying, I say, but now you're on your own, and they kind of look at me. Not that I don't have anything to teach you, but you have to decide at this point where you're going to go for your body style. You know, you know, those add-ons. You have your basics. You have strong fundamentals. And now, you know, where are you going to go? You like Marcelo style or Bernardo style?
This is exactly Fabio Gurgel, one of my coaches. He always said that in his school there was all the styles, and he didn't teach each style. He taught the basics. And each one would go to one path. So Marcelo went to like butterfly, Michael went to spider guard, I went to half guard, and he just taught everybody like the basics and the fundamentals and the most important principles, and each one would pick like what works better for you. No, so that was very cool too. And the last question here, what do you see about the future for Jiu-Jitsu? Like you were in the pace, you are in the present, what do you think about the future? It's gonna keep growing? What's the demographic that, I see, like, for example, in the seminar today, most of the students was like over 30, over 40, and every seminar I do, that's the demographic. So what do you think, like, that more people in this age is gonna join Jiu-Jitsu, or the kids is gonna grow and take over? What do you think about that?
You know what I think? I think the future of Jiu-Jitsu is bright, of course, and I think, and I thank, again, Renzo and Matt for this, because I'm old school. Say it old school is that I believe in keeping it real as far as like the rank goes. You know, if you're not here and you're not putting the time in, you're not going to get that rank. So I don't want to say a product, but your black belt going out the door, he or she may not be a world champion, or they have other things in life. It might be a housewife, it might be a doctor, it might be a lawyer, it might be an auto mechanic. But they're good, solid jiu-jitsu practitioners. As long as people like myself that have schools make sure that you have that solid person going out the door, all right, that keeps the integrity of jiu-jitsu together. But what's good is not only just the black belts, but my purple belts and my brown belts, we call it taking it to the lab. They're constantly experimenting with different things. And that's why jiu-jitsu, in my opinion, is consistently evolving. It always evolves. And from where I was, and I think you see it sometimes when people talk about, you know, well, what Rickson says, you know, with the basics, and I agree with Rickson, of course, he's a legend. versus people that have expanded a lot more on it and do these more risky things. I mean, I think you also have to look at the age dynamic too. Just what you brought up, Bernardo. You're gonna have people in their young 20s. You know, I'm gonna be 57 tomorrow. So, you know, when you're younger, you can open your game more and do a little bit more of these risky things and get away with it. And as you get older, I think that box for some of us, I'm not gonna speak for everybody, but as you get older, that box, and you get more and more careful and don't open your game as much and stick more to the basics, and that works for you.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%, because when you start getting old, your body started getting like less flexible, less athletic, so it's hard to do the green bolos going upside down.
Exactly.
So I think the basics works for who's young and for who is older too.
I drill them and I do them, but as far as like if I open up, if I'm in there with you know, high-level brown belts and things like that, I close my game up a lot, because I'm not going to be as efficient. Yeah, oh, you're a third-degree black belt, yeah, but I'm not going to be as efficient as that 25-year-old brown belt doing a burn bowl. It's just not going to happen.
I agree 100%.
So that's when I'll close that game up and do more to things where I'm more, believe it or not, like a smash and pass guy like you. Not as good, not nearly, but I try. And that's
no, but I saw you do well too. You do very well. But Rich, thanks so much, man.
Thank you for coming. Really a pleasure.
Whoever is in the Long Island, I suggest like come here and check it out. Awesome school, awesome environment too. And that's the most important thing in Jiu-Jitsu, I think.
Thank you, Bernardo.
Oh, thank you, Rich.
Thank you.